Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of The La Project with me, your host Han Royani, and my co-host
BJ, what's up?
What's up, guys? Selamat Hari Raya to those celebrating. We just came back from a 2-week holiday from Raya. A lot of things have happened since then, obviously. Around
Although
the world.
you guys probably would not notice that.
Yeah, you guys were
Thanks
too
to our
busy.
producers.
Yeah, because a lot of things happened over the last 2 weeks. But one of the biggest news that came out of Malaysia, actually it came like less than 24 hours ago.
Yeah. Late yesterday evening.
Yeah, we received the sad news that one of the former Prime Ministers of Malaysia, Abdullah Ahmad Badawi, have recently just passed away. So we would like to send our condolences to his family and also to anyone that is grieving through this hard period.
Yep.
I mean, it's always a tough time, whenever something like this happens.
Yep.
But it's good to know that his legacy and his body, will be buried in Masjid Negara with all the former prime ministers.
Yep.
So if you want to pay your condolences, you want to pay your respects,
Deservedly so, I think.
Sorry?
He should be. He
should be. So if you guys are want to give your respects or condolences to him, you guys are welcome to visit Masjid Negara and pay your tribute to him. The second biggest news of the week, I would say that from Malaysia, Xi Jinping is in town.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's arriving now, I think.
As of now, it's 15th.
They closed down for today at least. They've closed down like the KLIA highway.
Wow.
So you have to take the Max home. If you're coming this way, you have to take the Max from KLIA to here.
Okay.
You have to go, there's various detours and all that.
Yeah, we have to do that since he's arguably the second most powerful man on the planet.
Some might argue he's the most powerful. Dude.
Yeah. So
with bricks and all that.
Yeah,
So
as of right now, I would say
powerful.
China is slightly more. Is better to work with, I would say, at the moment. Okay.
I don't know about that. But I don't know which one is better to work with because they both have, strings attached to the aid they give us. But be it financially, militarily, whatever the case may be, even like services. Because, we'll jump right into this.
Okay.
Since it has a lot to do with the big thing that's going on around the world now, which is
the
Trump's reciprocal tariffs.
Yes, that's right.
Which he announced one day and pulled back the next.
Yeah.
Which was weird.
But
and then all the billionaires that somehow supported him, they became like overnight, they 2-3x their wealth.
Yeah.
Net worth, kind of thing. So
it's crazy that while less than 24 hours,
but he's the president, so he's allowed to do that, I guess.
Yeah, he put the tariffs crazy percentages for all the countries. Even one country like the McDonald Island. Are you familiar with
the
this?
McDonald Island? No, I've not heard of that.
So basically it's an island basically inhabited by penguins.
Okay.
So he put
where's this island?
To be honest, I'm not too sure. Somewhere in the Americas or in Europe. I have to do more research on this. But basically he put a tariff on a place where there are no humans.
Right.
Basically. So who's gonna do who's gonna do all the tariffs? The penguins?
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's weird.
But anyway, after 24 hours he decided to overturn that.
Yeah.
But
he rolled back the tariffs except for China.
Except for China.
Yeah.
In fact, he increased for the China
Yeah,
tariffs.
I think it's gone up to 125% as of right now.
Yeah. And China also replied.
About 6 hours ago, China replied by banning, not even implementing tariffs, but completely banning
US products.
No, completely banning exports of rare earth minerals to the US. So
really,
if Tesla and other electric car makers don't have stockpile, the stockpile for their chips are gonna get really low lah. Yeah, unless this is rectified. But Trump was at the UFC though on Sunday. I saw him at the UFC, and you know what? You can say a lot about Trump, but he's a G, dude. Like, okay, I understand you going while you were not the president.
Okay.
But
yeah,
but now you are the president.
Yeah.
And you're sitting ringside, like right beside Dana White, right beside Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he's the president, and he's anywhere but the White House.
Oh yeah, he hates the White House. He hates the White House. The White House is like, to him, is just an office building. It's not a home. But anyways, what's so gangster about it? He didn't just come alone. Okay, he brought Elon Musk and he brought his whole cabinet. Like Secretary of State Marco Rubio was there. The Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard was there. Secretary of Health Robert Kennedy was there with his wife, who is smoking hot for like a 70-year-old.
RFK.
Yeah, RFK.
Oh,
He has a hot wife, dude.
Okay.
And she's like 65, 70 and she's smoking.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, like seriously. And you know, like, that's gangster, dude. Like, you bring your whole cabinet.
Yeah, I mean, like
They all get front row seats to UFC. Dude, I would love to serve a president like that, though.
I mean, I don't know about that, but I mean, I don't know if I would want to work. Sure, I would want to work with a boss that do provide benefits and all that.
Yeah.
But working for Trump?
I don't know. Seems like he's a nice guy to work with, to work for, at least.
You know what his favorite saying was? Like his catchphrase was?
Only when you
Yeah.
Only when you
You're
Sorry,
fired.
sorry,
Yeah. You're fired.
Yeah.
That's all he says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you
Uh,
when you do well, there have been winners of
Okay,
the apprentice,
listen. Okay, if by that logic, anytime someone, they should be fired, right?
Not necessarily, not
Okay.
by that logic, of course. Like, I mean,
Okay.
he's doing it for a TV show.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That was for a TV show.
Yeah, yeah.
Now he's running a country.
Yeah.
And every week it seems like there's something that he, about.
that depends. That depends on your perspective of it.
Okay.
Like, you know, I don't know if you can say it's if it's like he implements it today and then like a week later you react. It's not gonna work. Like, I mean, governments don't work that way. No government has worked that way. And to expect his to work that way, although a lot of measures that he's been able to implement have been able to be implemented faster or more efficiently than they would have under other administrations, other governments.
Okay.
But whether you consider it or not, it has to depend on whether you are for or against that policy. So most of his supporters, the people that voted him in, not say his supporters lah, but the people who actually voted for him during the election, voted based on what his campaign promises are. And based on his campaign promises, he's carrying out what he said he was going to do. So like, I mean, yes, the other side might not like it. Like, obviously the liberal, more left-leaning side is not going to like his policies because he's a Republican president, has Republican policies. I get that, but you can't fault the way in which he's been able to implement those policies. Even despite having a lot of media and especially a lot of media backlash over it.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you mean policies, is one of them the abolishment of the Ministry of Education?
Yeah, but like we've talked before, it's not a complete abolishment because an abolishment has to go through Congress and he cannot do that. But he did severely limit their powers, especially in hiring practices for especially in assigning syllabus, you know, things like that for specific states. So he's just like allowing the specific states to go back and essentially set their own syllabus within a broad parameter. It's not like they're given, oh, you can just teach whatever you want. Like you can teach that the British were actually the good guys during the Civil War. You know, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But there is a framework in which is much broader than it was under previous administrations that give the state governments more power in determining what their respective education systems would look like. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, it's definitely interesting and entertaining to watch
Oh, yeah,
American
fuck yeah.
politics at this point. I meet a lot of American people nowadays, so even there, like outside of America, just so that they don't have to hear about this. But for the rest of the world, looking into America, I mean, obviously we're affected, a country like Malaysia,
especially the tariffs.
But it is very entertaining. Very entertaining. Like
people that have money in the stock market might not share that same sentiment as for it being
I'm just
entertaining.
talking about entertainment objectively.
Yeah.
So I mean,
agree
like,
with you there, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, even if you look at American late night talk show hosts,
Yep.
they talk about politics all the time over there, and
Yep.
so it's I don't know if it's refreshing. It's definitely eye opening for me. You know, looking into America from Malaysia or from any other country, to be honest. Looking into America and looking at what has happened and how the world have sort of reacted to whatever Donald Trump has done.
Right.
So it's very interesting, and for me, I feel like it's done more damage. I feel
What has done more damage?
the tariffs.
Okay.
And now it's just between US and China, but because because of the trade war between the two of them,
Yep.
it impacts almost every other country in the world. Because like every
Because
other
of
country does,
China being a
in a way,
manufacturing center
yes,
and all that,
manufacturing center, and most of these countries do work with China and the US.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, and luckily nowadays, like the countries don't have to make a choice, you know, between the US and China. So I feel like what has happened has truly opened a lot of people's eyes. More people are getting into politics because of all this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, so many things have happened in the US. I mean, like, there's so many things to keep track of.
Yep.
But you know what? Let's get back into Malaysian issues.
Okay.
If you're okay. Actually, today we have a special guest from Greenpeace, actually. She is the climate and energy campaigner for Greenpeace. Please welcome Hamizah Shamsudeen.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. Hi. Okay, first of all, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining. First of all, since you're from Greenpeace, maybe we can get straight into it. So we understand that you are the climate and energy campaigner for Greenpeace in Malaysia. So that is a pretty broad topic, right? So I'm sure there's a lot of categories that fall under that. What has it been like working on climate and energy for Greenpeace?
Okay, so maybe I'll start a little bit in terms of the energy, the campaign that I'm currently leading on. So for the energy campaign, our focus is more on the just energy transition. So what it means is that the world are transitioning the energy sector to a much more greener, safer and cost-effective alternative. Transitioning from the brown industry, fossil fuel, to renewable industry. So basically, we focus on like having this transition in like emphasizing more on the justice aspect of it.
Okay.
Because like for Greenpeace, our main priority would be on towards the environment, and then how it's impacting towards the social economy is there, but it's not the biggest priority for us. So maybe I'll share a little bit in terms of the current Malaysia Energy Transition Plan, the NETA. It talks about mainly it prioritizes more on the economy aspect of it.
Right.
It does talk about like, okay, it does reduce the carbon emission. It's tackling the energy issue, but then again, it doesn't. It will create more other energy like problem as well, because like, you know, when you have technology such as carbon capture storage, it's about basically storing the carbon into the used oil and gas well. And it's an offshore well. So meaning in layman term, you are putting a pressurized carbon into the marine, into the ocean as well. So even as I'm not an expert as well, but I'm just an environmentalist. So like even hearing this kind of this kind of activity, it does sounds very disturbing, in the sense that how it's going to impact the marine ecosystem over there, and how it's going to impact the coastal economy, coastal community as well. So basically, the current direction of the energy transition for Malaysia is focusing more on the benefit of the economy rather than pushing it for solving the environmental issue. And also when it talks about these new technologies, is eventually going to have impact towards society as well. So on the climate situation, I would say that the most common one for us in Malaysia would be flood. So we experience flood every year. every year basically. It's somehow, unfortunately, it becomes like a norm. So like, and when we are talking about this kind of projects like CCS project, or talking about offshore, it's impacting our marine ecosystem. How much is going to be like in terms of like when there's going to be like a monsoon or like flood, we are not having much of barrier for like, is it going to make the flood worse and stuff. And then if it talks about like sustainable development as well, we do see flash flood in like in certain areas. Like for example, in Shah Alam, like Seri Muda area was not a flood prone area, but these days that the like after the flood in 2021 or 2022, recently as well, when there's like a heavy rain, it's actually like impacted as well. So we can see that these are certain aspects that it's gonna impact the like flood is a very common issue that is there in Malaysia. So yeah.
Is there like, okay, since we were talking about floods and we're talking about Shah Alam, I used to stay in Shah Alam, so I did experience the flooding for a bit. What I mean, since you have been campaigning about climate and energy and all this, what can the government do actually to limit or at least to decrease the amount of flooding? Is it like less what's it called, forest, what do you call when you cut down the trees and all that?
Less deforestation.
Does it have to be less deforestation, or do you have to, is there something that the government can do, initiatives that people can join?
Or like, or at least before we get into that, what specifically is the cause for flooding, for example? Because we see it all the time, but we don't necessarily know the cause of it. Because a lot of the narrative that goes around about floods, especially in Malaysia, regarding flash floods as well, is mostly a government issue, like you raised, right? Like somehow government infrastructure is not there to mitigate the flooding issue. So is it just purely an infrastructure thing, or is it a truly environmental thing where you know, carbon emissions are somehow affecting something that is affecting the floods?
Okay, like for flood, there's a two situation, right? We are talking about the flood-prone area, like
like Kelantan, for example, right?
Kelantan, for
Like
example.
every monsoon season, they have really bad flood.
Yeah. So for natural, like in like people have suggested that to plant mangrove. Mangrove plantation does help in terms of like reducing the impact for the flood. So to say that to have the flood go away 100%, I'm not like
that's probably not gonna happen. Especially in Kelantan, it's probably not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. But we could have this kind of natural based solution. Like planting the mangrove, and then I think apart from just looking for the solution, we also have to not create more issue, like you know, like creating more projects that could lead to worsen the situation, the current situation. We do have national adaptation plan, which is also something that the progress is not like, it's quite slow in a sense. So I think that should be a priority, to be honest. Like when we are facing this issue every year, and the cost that we have to, the kind of burden that even the government have to go through, I think prioritizing on the national adaptation plan is a must, to be honest. Rather than looking into other kind of like currently, if you can see like the way that we see in Greenpeace is that the work that has more economy benefit has like the speed or the pace of working towards it is much more quicker compared to like the things that we need to talk about, like climate change bill. The conversation has been for quite some time, but then we are still not seeing it there. But like carbon capture bill has only took about like 2 years, and it's really like it's already been improved.
I mean, I you would know this, but I'm not an apologist for the government. Right? I'm not even close.
You're right.
But naturally, logically, at least, like money talks. You know, that's probably why. You know that. The other thing, the one thing, my personal observation of this, of the whole climate change issue, since 2014. I think I've been an observer, and I feel like the problem with implementing, at least on the government level, of implementing bills to mitigate climate change, is that they don't implementation of these bills, and these bills themselves are not sufficient enough to be self-funded. When you look at carbon capture, for example, these are steps that are taken by the big oil and gas producers, right?
Yeah.
For example, like Petronas, Shell, ExxonMobil. So they have a surplus of cash, like in the trillions sometimes, you know, just lying around.
Sure.
Maybe Petronas, maybe not in the trillions, but probably in the billions. You know, they can afford to give $1 billion a year to Terengganu for Wang Ihsan.
Yeah.
You know, so yes, they have a surplus of cash, and for them, like, okay, we do carbon capture. You regulate us to make us do carbon capture, and we can implement that, set it up within 2 years, like you said, because we have the surplus of cash. We don't need to go look for the cash,
Yes, yes.
and can pay for whatever materials that we need to build out the facilities for carbon capture.
Yeah.
You know, so when it comes to other things, for example, like flooding, even as we look at the case of Kelantan, number one, the state government there already, they're not exactly the most well-funded state government we have in Malaysia. That's one issue. Number two, the federal government does not have much purview over what goes on in Kelantan. Even if they wanted to give money to the state government, the federal government I'm talking about,
Right.
the state government are wholly distrustful of the federal government, and they have been for like the past 30-35 years.
Okay.
You know, so they themselves do not want to take that money, even though they know the money can help the rakyat. You know what I mean? So federal funding is not just an issue of the federal government doesn't want to give the money, but it's also an issue of the state government of Kelantan not wanting to take the money, because it's not coming from their same people. You know what I mean?
Okay, it's all political basically.
It's not all political, of course. Like all things in life, it's not all political. But at least when it comes to Kelantan and why infrastructure is not built out in Kelantan, not just for the flood, but for other things as well, basic things.
Yeah.
That's why. It plays a main part. You know,
Yeah.
It's not just that the federal government doesn't want to give the money. They've tried. If you look throughout history, they've tried. But the people in Kelantan, they're a different kind of bunch.
Yeah.
You know, so that is a part of the problem. But my main point is simply that green issues, or especially when mandated by the government, don't seem to be able to be self-funded. You know, and unfortunately, that makes it less of a priority. I would say. Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying is that if let's say from the people in Kelantan, they receive the money from, let's say they receive the money from their own party.
They're offered the money.
They offer the money, so then it's more likely for them to use the money to help the people because it was channeled to them from their own people. It's more likely for them to accept that rather than let's say the current government giving money now,
because they are at odds with the current government, right? Yeah.
So you're saying that until Kelantan can accept the money, then
I'm not saying that either. No.
Yeah,
No,
so-
like the relationship is not a one-way street.
Okay.
No relationship is.
Right.
So obviously, if we want to get into the weeds of it, the relationship obviously has to be mended somehow
Yeah,
between
yeah,
state
yeah.
and federal
Yeah.
government, right? So that is what has to be mended. I'm not talking about the sentiments of the rakyat and all that. Like, if you're talking about that, there's a whole different discussion that you have to address almost at the level of each individual rakyat, which is not possible. I mean, if you're talking about politics,
Yeah.
it's just not possible to keep everyone happy.
Yeah, but
Completely happy,
then at the same time, I
Like,
understand.
You know what previously BN politicians who have gone to Kelantan to campaign, right? Okay.
Well,
They give up money
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
that.
yeah,
right?
they do that
Like
everywhere.
people know that, right?
Yeah.
But the Kelantanese people, they take it. They take it, but they don't vote for you.
No, okay.
They just take it. Like
No,
they give beras and
Yeah.
all that, cooking oil and all that.
Yeah.
They hand it out on those election goodie bags. They do, but the Kelantanese people just don't vote for them. They take it.
Yeah.
They take it. They utilize it, but no way we're going to vote for you. So, like I said, the sentiment, if you want to talk on a grassroots level, on an individual level, that's hard to change. Dude. That's generational, you know. And the people who have left Kelantan and come and live in the cities, they have a different perspective already. But the people who have stayed in Kelantan, who are still voting in Kelantan, that's very hard to change. And as the divide gets bigger, it's going to be harder to change.
So do you think as like from Green, sorry, we like sort of
Yeah, it's okay.
So do you think as like for Greenpeace, when you hear about these kind of things, like say like what we talked about Kelantan and all that, how would Greenpeace try to approach the people of Kelantan about this issue?
Well,
I mean, because they have like a different mentality to you. The way you speak to people from KL and to people from Kelantan would be quite different. So
like maybe I could just narrow down a little bit in terms of the environmental issue.
Sure.
Not just like Kelantan specifically. Like I do agree when you say that money talks. Like we can see that where the money is there, and then the work is like just like okay, one after another. You can see the progress, and also the fact that the federal and the state government, the differences of interest. If we can talk about environmental issue like mining, for example, you can see there's more states who are willing to take part about it because it's where money goes to them, like because land use. And then like when we talk about like for example for Kelantan or any other states, it's mainly about like how they are gaining their own interest. Like when there's the money for them, then they have the interest as well. So I think even though there's a differences between the federal and the states, it's just the same. It's just about like where the money goes. Like if they get the more money, then they will be more interested.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
So but the thing is that with Kelantan, for example, like and some other of the other states, the issue of mining, for example, like how it's going to impact our forest management. We can see more things like the area where ESA, environmental secured, I think environmental secured area. So basically what it means is that particular area has been gazetted, that you can't actually touch that area. It's protected. So we can see that there has been news that this area they wanted to de-gazette it, so that they can look it for mining. So I think it goes back to like if you
for logging, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for critical mineral as well. So like that's the thing. Like when we talk about transitioning towards renewable energy, we talks about EV, for example. We talks about battery. Solar needs battery in order to sustain more longer and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we talks about this technology. It's also the needs to talk about like how can we make sure that these practices is sustainable, how these practices is not greenwashing. So that is also something that we are concerning as well. Like we are not just talking about transitioning towards renewable energy. We are also talking about like make sure that when you transition, we talks about other aspect to it, like how we can make sure that the mining will be much more like what is the definition of mining, sustainable mining, how our grid system, like what kind of improvement that we need for the grid system for it to handle the renewable, so that it makes sense for the transition for renewable to happen. And when it talks about money, for example, right, there is an economy aspect for this industry, this green industry. Unfortunately, if we are focusing on sustaining the current industry, the brown industry, it's going to delay this transition. And then at the end of the day, like if you're expecting like in 2050, then we start to transition to renewable, it doesn't make sense. Like you wanted to like transition to a much more greener, safer, cost effective, but you're not talking about the real solution right now, which is you could transition to renewable, you could upskill the current workers who are working in the oil and gas skill towards the green technology, but that's not much of this kind of discussion. And then maybe like if I can add a little bit from what we understand, that when it comes to the discussion about solving the environmental issue, right, it's more like those who are present in the discussion are coming from the economy. The economists are there. It's not like those who are experts on the environment. They are not being called in that discussion. Like we need to have the discussion from this group of people as well, because I, like me myself, I'm not an expert. I might we're able to share with you a few points that we know about it. But then when we have these experts from like the environmental field, like geologists or like those kind of people, they can talk a little bit more about like how impactful is, like, even though you're going for economic benefit, but then how it's going to impact the environment. Like, what's the use when we are pushing for the economy, but eventually it's going to impact our people, it's going to impact the environment, we are going to get the cost back. Like, yeah.
Well, to that I would say that, just to play devil's advocate for this, I would say that the flip side of that is that what's the point of having a green new world one day when everyone is not able to survive because they don't have the economic position to survive. Because if we are too focused on the green side, you know what I mean. And one thing that can be seen at least is that the shift to a greener industry, especially when we look at, for example, the biggest fossil fuel thing that we know about that's been transitioning lately are cars. You know, from fossil fuel cars to electric cars, and it's not a cheap thing to change. Like, no matter where you are in the world, not just Malaysia, but even if you're in the US or you're in Europe, it's not something that is completely affordable for you to be going from an ICE car, internal combustion engine car,
completely change
to an electric car, because you have to consider other factors as well. Like, for example, one thing that I saw especially during this whole Ramadan and Raya season is that the electric cars that travel on the highway, they take a longer time, like a much longer time to recharge.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
They take, like, even at its
It'll
fastest,
take a few hours.
at its fastest, it's still 45 minutes, which you'll be stuck at the petrol station not doing anything for a minimum of 45 minutes. That's the fastest you can go. Whereas when you're pumping petrol, is basically 5 minutes at most, 10 at most. You know, if you're washing your windscreen as well. So, I mean, time is also a factor. It's not just an economic issue. But where I'm not like, don't get me wrong, I'm not a person that thinks that it's not beneficial at all to have implementation of green policies. I just think that there has to be a balance. And unfortunately, with how the way the world currently works, you have to have a slightly more skewed, if you're talking about it being a meter, with economics being on one side and
environmental,
complete environmental policies on the other, you sort of have to be skewed a bit to the economic side. If not, like what Dubai went through in the early 2000s is that they were building like in the late 1990s, early 2000s up to 2005. They were like up to 2008. They were building huge skyscrapers. But suddenly when the recession hit and money dried up, everything stopped. Like, there were literally cranes stuck on top of like half-finished buildings. And I think that is a very important lesson to make sure that we don't, especially in the development or transition, like you said, to a greener lifestyle, we don't run out of money and have to stop the green projects halfway. You know what I mean?
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
So to me, that's if we are removing all nefariousness from the discussion, I think that is one of the things that unfortunately still has to be skewed towards the economic side, towards the money side, in order to make sure the green projects can still go and be completely implemented all the way to 2050, 2070 and beyond.
So on that note, we were talking about like transitioning and all this. One of the questions that we have is, we wanted to know what was what's the economics of solar technology, for example, in Malaysia. So how's that, for example, for people, Malaysians, let's say they want to slowly what's it called? Transition to a cleaner energy. So
cleaner way of life.
How would that work? Like, what's the economics of that in Malaysia, especially for people who want to do that?
Okay, so like for solar, for example, firstly, I think in terms of the price, it has reduced for the last 13 years. Like, for example, from what we know is that usually at like last 13 years, last 10 years, each project of solar minimally it requires at least 80,000 and above. Nowadays, we can hear that with that same energy consumption, with the same kilowatt, you can actually cut like 25,000 and above. So it's like there's a drop of at least 60 to 80% of the
Okay.
price itself.
Okay.
But still, it's quite pricey for the public
To install.
transition. Yeah.
Solar, yeah.
So where else if we talk about like currently we are highly the resources are from coal and also gas. But then again there is also a high subsidy for the coal and gas. So that's why our electricity prices are not that expensive because of the
Right.
subsidies are there.
Right.
But when it comes to like gas, for example, it depends on the global market price.
Right.
So it could fluctuate to like a very like it could be a very low to
Yep.
very high. So in terms of the pricing, there is a risk there, a higher risk compared to if the government opted for like renewable for like such as solar. So like for Greenpeace Malaysia, we don't push much on the public to transition to solar at the moment because unless you have the capacity to do it, then it's fine.
Yeah.
But if what we are trying to push for is that increasing the adoption of rooftop solar in particularly
Yep.
because solar farm, floating solar does has environmental impact.
Yeah.
So rooftop solar is not that much like in terms of the environmental impact, it's not that high.
Okay, sorry to cut you off. I do have a question. It may make me sound dumb, but okay, what are the negative effects of solar farming?
Solar farming is basically if you're using that particular land that could be used for agriculture.
For
then
what? For
agriculture.
agriculture,
Yeah,
okay.
so then it's better to use it for agriculture.
Okay.
But if it's like memang the land is not being used for anything.
Uh-huh.
Like desert, for
Yeah,
example.
it's like a desert land. Then it's fine. It's a different
It's the
situation.
same thing with wind farms, right? I've heard about this with wind farms.
Yeah.
Because wind farms, while they generate a lot of electricity, they kill a lot of birds. So
Okay.
that
So my question is, so if when people are able to, my first question, how long would Malaysia be able to take in order for us to, I wouldn't say fully transition to renewable energy, but at least more than half of the energy we consume are renewable? How long till we get to that point?
Oh, to be honest, I don't really have that answer, to be honest.
Okay.
But then what we are pushing for is that for that particular plan that government are pushing for 2050, then it should be like the aim for 2050 to have a much more bigger percentage of renewable in the energy
Right.
mix.
Right.
Because that the current plan they are only projecting 17% of renewable and 56% from gas. So we want to like flip the story.
Yeah.
It should be renewable that has the higher percentage. Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a few questions regarding the solar. First of all, you were talking about the rooftop solar, right? So I've heard, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard when it comes to rooftop solar, especially residential ones, you cannot power electricity like in your home. Is that correct? It's only for hot water, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
is
no.
that actually true?
No, I think maybe
Previously it was like that.
previously it was like that.
Okay.
But since 2011,
Okay.
the government has implemented an incentive program.
Okay.
Fit in tariff, they call it FIT. So this particular program was renewed in 2016 with a new program called net metering, which is NEM.
So basically you sell back whatever extra you make.
Yeah, so that is the NEM.
okay.
FIT is basically you generate the solar and you
Utilize it.
You didn't utilize it. You send it back to the grid system.
Oh, you sell everything back. Right.
So you get the money from TNB.
So that
so
money
you can-
subsidizes your bill.
Yeah. So NEM is the other way around. You use the solar first,
Any
and then
extra
the
you sell back.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Australia, for example,
Yeah.
does it the second way. Canada does it the first way, which is that you sell back everything that you generate,
Yeah.
and then you basically pay off your bill with whatever the government gives back to you. Yeah.
So that kind of program actually helps. Like
And I think why I ask that question is because I feel like people need to know that because there's still a lot of misconceptions, especially like I asked you about question because I genuinely didn't know that the government has already implemented certain steps in order to get get the public to get on board, because that is actually something that's really, really useful, because it actually will help, one, lower the bill of the average Malaysian. That's one. But number two, it also helps the government, because if more people are on their own self-sustaining electricity grid, you don't have to rely on the main grid, which is also another good thing. The less the government has to subsidize, the less they have to tax, and so on and so forth. Or at the very least, the money that they tax, they can be implemented towards other things like more green projects. So I feel like that's one thing that most regular Malaysians don't even know about yet, and it'd be very useful to know that, because yes, like you said, upfront costs, installation costs can be expensive, expensive, but I think over like a 10-year, 20-year run, that would greatly benefit you economically.
So like currently they have a zero capex program where it means that you don't really have to pay at the initial, but you have to pay monthly.
Right.
So that might be like an interest.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
So that's
like a
also
machine.
another option.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, like if we are talking about the whole like masses, like the public, not everyone could afford that. So
true.
Yeah, those who can, these are the things that you can.
But why I say that is because we have like a lot of, especially in the last year and a half, there's a lot of narrative of doom and gloom economically in Malaysia, but there are affluent places in Malaysia, and not all of them are utilizing it. And these affluent places who could very well afford to should. Like I'm not a communist, I'm not a socialist, furthest thing from it, but when it comes to things like this, I feel like you have the resources, you should utilize your resources for the greater good. Because it doesn't just benefit other people, it benefits your own kids, your own grandkids one day. So that, I feel like, is something that people are sort of being selfish about, or maybe they just don't know. Either way, they should know, they should be educated on it, and I think it's very useful.
And
especially in Malaysia.
actually, it's also helped in terms of the electricity bill, because like one of the welfare home that we solarize, it helps them to actually reduce up to 40% of their electrical bill.
Okay.
That's a lot.
So like
That's a lot.
it's also a benefit to the owner itself, like if they are going for this kind of program.
Like for a 2,000 ringgit bill, 40% of that's already 800 ringgit off. 800 is a lot.
Wow.
And 2,000 is not a lot. You think about it. A 2,000 ringgit electricity bill for a regular 4,000 square foot bungalow house, that's normal. That's normal. And you get 800 ringgit off. That's a lot. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, so I mean, like previously we've talked about how if people can afford it, they can set this up in their own homes, right? But let's say someone were able to afford it, can they generate enough at home so that they can be fully self-sufficient?
Okay.
Is there a way we can?
That's a good question.
Like for example, like to be self-sufficient, we have to understand that solar, if it's generated during the daytime, then you can directly use the electricity
while it's being generated. Oh, okay.
But
that's cool.
You need something to store it for night.
Of course.
Or the cloudy day. So that's why you need battery. So if you want to like totally go self-sufficient by yourself, then you need a battery system for it.
Right.
But it's like the thing is that also there has a possibility of having the grid system as a big battery.
Right.
But it has to be improved to that standard. So so TMB did mention that they are working on it, but I'm not sure how far the work has been done. But if that is there, then we could also not just we might not need battery system by ourselves. We could rely on the grid system as a much more bigger battery system. So
Okay.
But the thing is, like maybe I will add a little bit more in terms for the current NEM system. You need to have for you to apply for the NEM system, it's only capped to 70%. What it means is that if you are using I'm just giving a number lah. So basically, you are using 10 kilowatt per month. You could only install the solar to 7 kilowatt. So the 30% needs to depend on
still on the grid
system.
Okay.
So
Okay. That's still alright.
Yeah. I mean, that's still.
I mean, there's still a chunk of the electricity bill. A lot of.
So in a zombie apocalypse, that would be like the most viable
Zombie
option.
apocalypse, no one has jack. Don't talk about electricity, dude. You know,
Okay.
everyone's gonna be looking for guns.
Okay,
But maybe I can add a little bit more,
Oh,
like
sure.
the things that people like. It's not like people forget about it,
Yep.
but energy efficiency is something that everyone can utilize.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I think
Agreed.
energy efficiency, energy conservation as well. Like I think lifestyle as well. Like nowadays we are heavily dependent on online, for example. Like we use a lot of electricity, power and stuff. So I think in terms of like having a much more better practice in terms of
Yeah.
conserving our energy, also something that all of us can do. Energy efficiency as well. I think it's not just about using an energy efficient appliances, sorry. So it's not just that. It's also like there has been talk about regenerative architecture.
Right.
What it means is that the structure, like the building, the structure of the building, it was built in such a way that it does not consume much energy. So it use like
right,
natural light.
Yeah.
It's there's a cooling aspect to it.
Yeah.
So I think these are also something that needs to be included in the discussion when we are talking about transitioning towards a greener and cost-effective
Yeah.
alternative.
I think Singapore had like one or a few residential buildings that are like that. Like the whole building is just like covered with plants, and the way they designed it so that like the airflow is good and all that. So it's like it's modern. It's modern,
yeah.
but also at the same time it's a lot of natural elements to it. You know what I mean?
It's actually not a new thing. Because they found like some ruins in the island of Crete in Greece. So that they found a mansion, an intact mansion that was covered under like volcanic ash.
Okay.
So when they uncovered it, the whole mansion didn't have any fans, didn't have anything because it was old, right? But they had like sort of built-in cooling jet streams.
I've seen this. So
You
it's
know?
like at the top of the building. So the
so it funnels cool air.
I
into the building.
saw that. I saw that.
So yeah,
Yeah,
like,
they don't use like air conditioning or
No,
anything
no.
like that.
Yeah.
So it's just natural air.
Yeah.
So I
So
saw that.
things like that. I guess they use clay, like because clay is more cooling.
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
things like that. Yeah.
Clear.
Yeah. Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have much time left. Okay. We do have one final question.
Let's go for it.
I mean, okay, since we've talked about like renewable energy, climate change, and all this, what other viable alternatives do we have that are there other than solar energy?
From what the discussion I heard before is that we are not suitable for wind
Yep.
because our
Okay.
wind speed is quite low.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we talk about hydro, for example, from Greenpeace point of view, we don't really encourage because it involves deforestation.
Yeah.
So
That's your
mini
issue with the Kenyan Dam, right?
Yes, yeah.
I've heard about that.
So when mini hydro, there's a potential for mini hydro, but then again,
What is mini hydro again?
mini hydro
A
is
dam,
basic.
right?
Yeah, they are using the river stream.
Oh,
So
okay.
they
Okay.
create
Yeah.
the dam from the river stream.
So they create like water pressure and all that. They create
Yeah,
the
yeah.
electric.
Yeah.
But how is that different than normal hydroelectric?
So basically, like if a major hydro dam, you will need like a big space.
Yep.
So that's where the deforestation happen, right? So mini hydro is basically using whatever the structure of the river itself. Like it doesn't
okay.
really involve.
So you don't divert the river or anything.
Yeah,
like that.
no.
Okay.
But then again, in terms of the kind of energy that it produce, it's not that high. It might be able to like sustain a one particular area.
Right.
But so like if like an isolated area,
But it can sustain the whole grid for the whole
no,
country.
No, yeah. So some of the isolated area, like projects like CSR project and stuff. So they go for solar and also mini hydro. So like that you can see like there's a few CSR project that's focusing on this.
Right.
So apart from that, I think when it comes to biomass, it's a little bit tricky for Greenpeace as well because we believe that when you start using biomass as biomass energy, there is also a need for the resources, and then that might trigger another issue.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like you need the resources, right?
Yeah.
So it's best to just not go for that at the moment.
Right.
So solar is our best push for Greenpeace Malaysia. And also we talks a little bit about energy efficiency, and we are trying to look into like if there is other kind of renewable energy that we could also like the country could even look at. Like there has been talk about they are looking into geothermal
Yep.
for Sabah and Sarawak.
Yep.
But I'm not sure in terms of like
That would solve the
whether-
rubbish issue, right? Geothermal? No?
Yeah, I'm not sure about.
I don't know.
No, geothermal is basically they are using the heat from the underneath.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Oh, okay.
so
okay.
they are
Oh,
utilizing.
okay. So they use that as energy.
They will utilize it in such a way lah. I'm
Alright.
also not quite sure about it, but they are looking into Sabah and Sarawak for it. It's just that I have not heard much about like the technology is here or something like that. So it's more on like
What about the big
still-
one?
Huh?
What about the big one that
The
I
big
guess we
ones,
haven't mentioned yet? Nuclear.
Oh,
Oh, that's okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
It-
like I mean nuclear goes wrong very badly, but when it's working,
Yeah, it
it's
does provide a
probably
lot of energy.
the most
Maybe
efficient
I want to
form.
ask you another question. Like,
Mhm.
how confident are you in terms of the waste management? Like the normal municipal waste
Yeah,
management
no,
of Malaysia?
that's a valid
Yeah,
question. That's a
yeah.
valid question. But if in order to have and even then, like when you look at Japan, even when it comes to a natural disaster, nothing can be done, right? When it hits you, it hits you. But in terms of efficiency, at least nuclear is the most efficient, right?
I think it goes back to the idea of like when we are trying to solve the environmental issue,
Mhm.
we need to understand. We need to put aside a little bit, like in terms of the economy aspect. I mean, not saying that we should not think about the economy aspect of it. We need our economy, obviously,
Mhm.
but if we are trying to say that we are solving the climate issue, yes, it's a climate solution. It has to be a climate solution.
Yeah.
It should not be a
Yeah.
climate solution, but have an economic interest. Like if you are talking about economic, solving economic, like you're sustaining the economy, it has to be a sustaining economies project. It's not supposed to be a climate solution, tapi
It's
at the
for
side,
economic
it's actually
purposes,
it's for
yeah.
economic purposes.
No.
Yeah.
I get that. All I'm saying is that when you consider it, nuclear is both renewable, sustainable, and efficient. So like, it's there. It just has to be regulated properly. If you ask me.
Yeah, I mean,
Fears are fears. Like we've seen things happen go badly. Yeah, but there are many nuclear reactors in the US that has never had incident. For example,
I mean, if
But-
it's
because if it managed properly.
I mean, if it's well regulated, sure. But at the same time, you have to think about whether your solution is helping your goal or is it like making it worse. So, for example, like there's like when you have nuclear power, there's two options. Like it's either for economic or you're trying to create more energy to to help.
No,
the
but it
economy
can
or
also be
whatever.
clean though.
Yeah, it can be
Yeah,
clean.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
at the
like I
same
said.
time, there's a risk that let's say something does go wrong.
Okay.
They can have like another Chernobyl, for example.
Yeah.
So that's a big risk.
But okay, I get that. But I brought up also an example that nothing has happened
Yeah,
over
in the-
60, 70 years.
Okay, maybe I'll share a little bit in terms of the technical aspect that I heard from the expert
Okay,
lah.
yeah,
Okay.
Because
that would help.
then again, I'm not
Yeah.
an expert.
Okay.
So when it comes to like nuclear, if it's like the power shutdown,
Uh-huh.
for you to just start balik the system,
Yep.
it would take a few hours for it.
Okay.
But like for example, for renewable, you don't have that issue.
Right.
And when we talk about like maybe like even if it's not something that we are going for the gas, we don't have that issue with gas, but we have that issue with nuclear. And for example, like when
The
we-
long wake up time.
yeah, the long wake up time. And then in the past, Greenpeace do have like a few anti-nuclear campaign before in other country. For one of the particular campaign was in France. So it took them actually, they are projecting 10 years to build the plant.
Yeah,
for
it
nuclear
does take
plant.
about 10 years. Correct.
But it took longer than that.
Oh, okay.
And it's also very costly.
Yep.
So yeah, and
It is, yep.
yeah. So that's another point. And then the other point that the experts share with us is that for a nuclear plant, right? It's in terms of the waste, for example, like I mean, we can compare to Japan, like saying that okay, natural disaster happen and everything, but even if without a natural disaster, we are not there yet in terms of our waste management. We need to, if you want to talk about nuclear, we need to start talking about the waste management first.
Okay.
We need to solve in this non-hazardous waste issue first. So that brings some confidence for us to talk a little bit more
if I
about
understand
nuclear.
it correctly, there is no like proper waste management for nuclear waste as of yet.
In Malaysia?
Or
In Malaysia,
no,
not in Malaysia.
like
Everywhere.
everywhere.
Okay.
Or is there a way to deal with it like in a green way, or is that not just around yet?
So from what I know is that currently the nuclear plant that exists in the world, they are storing the waste.
Right.
Like
okay.
they have
so they're not disposing the waste. Right.
they have a system for them to
Yeah.
store.
That's not
But-
surprising to me because Chernobyl, what they did was they just built a dome, a big concrete dome, and then they covered it.
But
But
unfortunately,
they didn't dispose it, you know. Yeah, you know.
But unfortunately for Japan,
Yep.
when that happened, like when the earthquake happened, they had to let go of it
Yep.
because there's another thing that I mean,
Yeah.
like there's a release and everything.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's why they had to do it, and that's why they announced it to the public about
Right.
it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So we don't really have like a system where it's like it could vanish or anything yet
Right.
lah. It's just
Right.
about storing lah.
So that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Obviously, we can talk more about this. I have a lot more questions, and but first of all, we want to say thank you so much to Hamizah for coming to the show today and talk about the work that you do with Greenpeace. But before we say our goodbyes, is there one final message that you want to share to people?
Okay. So I think
Maybe about your current campaign.
Okay. So I think first of all, thank you guys for
No,
inviting.
of course.
Yeah. So basically, I think for the public, one wish would probably be like more conversation about like more awareness about like these are things that are happening in our country. We need to start take this issue seriously. We need to understand that when we talk about energy transition, it has to be solving the climate issue first. It's also about how it's impacting to the society because we are also a part of it. And not forgetting on the economy aspect of it. But then again, I feel like in the terms of the discussion, it's very at the moment it's very quite close in the sense that it's only like the economies are talking about it. It's like the those people who are talking about it are like, yeah, they have their own benefit. Like they will think about their own field of benefit.
Right.
It has to be more inclusive. It has to be like more people are talking about it. More people are understanding the issue, and we need to build more discussion on this so that it's not just like, okay, Greenpeace is pushing for one solution, but if we have more conversation about it, probably we will able to get more
course.
different
Different types
mind.
of
Yeah,
solutions,
different mind
yeah.
has different kind of ideas and stuff. So we need to start talking about solving the climate issue, like prioritizing like solving the climate issue rather than talking about the economy aspect of it.
Yeah. All right. Okay, thank you so much for
Okay.
coming on the show, Hamizah. For those of you that are watching, as usual, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if there's anything that you think we should talk about, do let us know in the comments. Jay, anything?
Let us know how you feel about sustainable energy. Do you think nuclear is it? It's not. Let us know. Let us know what you think. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of The La Project. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Let's go.